Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Jennifer Elwell Comeau, who's here to share with us her Nautilus award-winning children's book, The Inside of Me, and her debut novel, A Moon in All Things. What happens when a high-powered engineer walks away from corporate life to follow a dream rooted in ancestral wisdom, music, and the magic of nature? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Jennifer Elwell Comeau inspires humans to restore our sacred partnership with the rest of the natural world. A certified forest therapy guide, singer, songwriter, and author-speaker, nature is Jennifer's creative muse. Her Nautilus gold-winning children's book, The Inside of Me, is a profound reminder of the magic that happens on the inside when we go outside. Her debut novel, A Moon in All Things, has been called atmospheric and beguiling by Kirkus Review, and her poems and essays are published in 4 anthologies. She has produced 2 albums of original music available on all streaming platforms. She partners with Oz Green, an award-winning nonprofit bringing youth leading the world programs to Australia, Africa, and India. Jennifer resides in Maine, where she holds climate buoyancy and writing workshops, hosts sacred circles, and runs a wild wonder forest bathing business. So welcome to the show, Jennifer Elwell Comeau.
Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your 2 new books. You've had such a profound journey from corporate engineer to forest therapy and storytelling. What sparked this transformation?
It was quite a long transformation, I'll say, over the course of about 15 years, but I found myself really not fulfilled in the corporate environment. I had gotten an engineering master's degree, in a sense, because my parents told me to. The people-pleasing young girl just, okay, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And really always felt a little bit like a round peg in the square hole. And so it took its toll on me. I was in for almost 30 years and just could feel myself turning into a very hardened, sort of, I wouldn't say bitter, but difficult in the sense that you didn't mess with me kind of woman. And that wasn't who I was as a kid at all. So I felt that I was losing myself. And I began to ask the question, what is the more that's longing to be expressed in my life that is currently being limited and hampered by this huge career that I had? And so I began to feed my creative muse and just to believe that, okay, I don't have an MFA, Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. Okay, I don't have a botany degree. So what? What do I love? I love the woods. I love walking with these ancient beings that really are our elders. And I've always loved writing. And I was quite a wordsmith, even in the corporate environment. So I thought, you know what? If not now, when? And if not me, who? And so I just began to feed that.
Well, I know that we are so glad that you did because, of course, your book, The Inside of Me, is a Nautilus Gold winner, and congratulations. What an accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you. It really is. And it's, I think it's a testimony to believing in yourself and believing that if there's a story that wants to be written, then if one can stay devoted to that things like miracles can happen.
So let's talk a little bit about your ancestry. How did this really bring together this creative spark that resides within you?
What I'd say is I come from Bardic, the Irish Bardic storytelling tradition. And that tradition, Ireland used to be the most forested country in all of Europe. And now it's the most denuded landscape. A lot of those rolling green hills we love. Once upon a time, those were forests. And once upon a time, druids gathered in these sacred groves called nematons and told stories. And there were Shanashis, traveling storytellers, who would make their living just by coming into someone's little thatch roof cottage and telling a story, and the community would gather around and pay for whatever food and give them hospitality. So I think that is what's in my cells, and that was the kind of part of me that wanted to be expressed more fully in giving into this creative impulse, this thing that said, I have something to say and I want to say it. And so, in particular, my novel, which is A Moon in All Things, is set in 1820s Galway Bay, Ireland. And so it really encapsulates this notion of the Irish as having what Sir William Wilde once said back in 1848, that the Irish have a belief in the marvelous. And I loved that. And so I wanted to write a story where the belief in the marvelous was still prevalent in Ireland. And so I couldn't go too far. It couldn't be contemporary, but I didn't want to go so far back into the 1790s, which is when the penal laws were so horrifically in play with the Irish people that they were just in abject poverty. So I wanted something in between. I chose 1820s because it was a virgin time when the Industrial Revolution was just gaining traction. There were things called machines making shoes. I mean, what? And at the same time, the people still had their customs, their rituals, their stone circles, their ceremonies. And so that's what I've encapsulated in this coming of age story, the novel, which is called A Moon in All Things.
Why, after consulting for Earth restoration organizations, did you choose inspirational storytelling as a way to shift minds and hearts instead?
I believe my mother used to say, you catch more flies with honey, right? We've all grown up with those kinds of sayings. And I think that working for places like Tree Sisters, which is a reforestation and a gender equity organization, or even as a consultant for National Wildlife Federation, what I was finding is that it is a good fight, and it's a fight. It's a fight to shift mindsets, and it's a fight to begin to help people see that their choices, their choice making, is having an impact, and it's an impact that is not necessarily best for the life force of planet Earth. And so, in working in those arenas, it's very hard not to get in places of despair because change is hard and change is slow. Going back to this idea of the bardic storyteller tradition, I thought, you know what? If I can write a song that can shift someone's thinking, that can carry them to their heart center, from this rational frontal lobal brain that we have that's constantly thinks that it's operating the entire body of us, get them to a place where they're moved. That's going to shift mindsets. And so, for example, in my children's book, which is called The Inside of Me, and it's about what happens on the inside when we go outside. And the me is also the state of Maine. So 9 different beautiful nature places in Maine are rendered on the pages by the amazing illustrator Susie Linden. And so this idea that if I can start with the littles and help them to see that going outside is a treasure trove of resilience building, of buoyancy, of creativity, which science is all catching up with that and saying blood pressure lowers, heart rate lowers, stress cortisol lowers. We get fed from the trees with this invisible, they're called pheromones, this invisible chemical that gives us almost like a narcotic boost. And so if I can start there with a book that captures kids' imaginations, and I have to tell you, Marianne, there are some mothers and fathers in my state of Maine which are saying, why did you make these 9 places so far apart within the state? Because now my kid wants to go to every single one of them, and we're doing road trips every weekend. So so anyway, I think that's in general why I felt that I could give more to the world. I could shift mindsets better by tapping into my own creative gifts and offering those in a way that could hopefully have a better impact, a bigger impact than working within some of those restoration organizations.
I love that. Being able then to really kind of map out in Maine where we can go and experience. And it has me kind of thinking for young readers. I mean, what do you expect for them, or what are you hoping that they'll experience and feel as they go through this book?
Enchantment, engagement, that as one is looking at a crow, they're also counting you in. You are part of that landscape. You are part of this terrain of the wildwood or the forest. And so with school visits with the children's book, what I teach is two aspects of being in the woods. I teach being an explorer, which is a more active, let's call it the yang way of being within a wooded landscape. And also, equally of value and less what we've been taught, is the observer, melting into the landscape, becoming part of it, and just being quiet and letting our senses let the world, the wild world, come to us rather than us feeling like we have to turn over every rock or jump in every stream or some of those more yang expressions of being outside.
This book features such beautiful natural places. I understand that this serves as a mirror for our inner beauty. Can you share a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, the pivotal moment in this children's story is when in the center, in the middle of the book, the narrator asks the question, how can it be that the inside of me is now easy and breezy and all sparkly because they've been out in these natural landscapes? And so then from somewhere comes the answer. Yes, it is true for me and for you. However we feel and whatever we view is a mirror that shows what inside of us glows. And so it's the idea that we are changed too by going outside. And if we see more beauty in our lives, we will have more beauty inside of us. We will be coming from that place of respect and reverence and fun and joy instead of a place of worry or competition or needing the most shiny new gaming object or whatever it is that sometimes society is programming into us that is truly not what we long for or children long for.
Does mindfulness play a role in this book?
Absolutely. Yeah. You could call it a mindfulness book, a book about how to walk, as Thich Nhat Hanh once said, how to walk gently through a wood and let your feet guide you and let your feet feel the heartbeat of earth and know that you are having an impact in being there and have a sense of responsibility for that impact. And I think that gets to this idea of what I have fondly termed we need a new definition for success because we have been programmed. I have been programmed to, why did I go into engineering? Gosh, someone told me to because that's what being a good girl does. And yet, this idea of climbing the corporate ladder because of the promise of titles and minions and money and status and stuff is not really what feeds us. What feeds us is being in relationship with others in community, with the rest of the natural world, the other beings that give us such awe and wonder when we avail ourselves to them. And so I have this quote that I use when I speak, and it says, stop climbing everybody else's mountain. The only mountain longing to be climbed is your own. And so if we can each find our creative expression in the world in a way that serves beyond our own personal gain, which is what the old definition for success would suggest, but serve something greater. The paradox is that we feel an inner richness as a result.
I love that. And it shows when we are ready to redefine success, how things can really change for us.
Yeah. And I will say, Marianne, that I took a 99% pay cut in order to do this, following the hard work, and I couldn't be happier. And I feel so, as my protagonist in the Moon and All Things book, Morgan, she says, I feel all lined up on the inside. And that's, a way of saying authentic, being authentic, coming home to my gifts and where they meet the needs of the world.
Well, let's talk about your novel, A Moon in All Things. Can you share a little bit about that with us without giving away any spoilers?
I sure can. First of all, I'm going to share that Kirkus Reviews gave it a very strong review, not a single bad thing, and they called it atmospheric and beguiling. And I have to say, not that, of course, we hear atmospheric all the time, but in looking up the definition so that I could show it on social media, it was called the heartbeat of a novel, the heartbeat of a story. And I do feel that this coming of age novel is all heart because, in some ways, it's a bit of a feminist novel. It's about a young woman who has some psychic gifts. They would have called it a bit of the sight in Ireland. And she doesn't yet understand what the power of them. And it's at a time where those kinds of ways of knowing were viewed as, if not passe, then even dangerous for the power brokers, the people who were the colonizers and the Catholic Church, who were trying to kind of keep people within a box of behaving and thinking. And so she receives, in the way that, on every great journey, every great quest, there's some inciting incident. And in the inciting incident, she has a vision of a sea god. The sea god in Ireland is called Manannan MacLear. And the sea god basically is telling her she must claim the gifts that are her own and claim, which happen to be what her great grandmother was also known for. She was known as the great healer, Isla. And so Morgan sets off on an inner journey and an outer quest to really discern what is mine to do here at a time when it would have been far easier for her to just kind of conform to, at that time, what most women were occupied with, which was stitching the perfect crewel, keeping the lovely hearth of the home, and trying to find the most successful husband in their little village that they could possibly find. So she feels and begins to listen differently to what is hers to do. And in the end, she has a choice to make. How far can she go? Should she go? And how much risk is she willing to take?
So, your main character, Morgan Lane, is a very powerful character. How much of her story reflects your own?
Well, in the sense that returning to my gifts is also what she's being asked to do. And I think, although it was set 200 years ago, it was at a time when, in general, people were turning away from the exquisite relationship they had with the rest of the natural world, the forest medicines, the foraging, the being able to treat each other without needing a doctor or a prescription or any of the things that we have today. And so, in a way, it's an invitation to remember that we once knew these forest medicines. We once were able to find ways of healing ourselves, whether it be through things like that, or through ceremony, or through community. And so I am very much embedded in the character, in the character of Morgan Lane, my ancestors, because I grew up with my Irish mom telling us all kinds of stories and singing. Oh my goodness, she sang, which is why I have original songs in this book. In the back, there's a QR codes with links to the songs. I guess for me, it is such an invitation to find what is yours to do. And it may not be easy, and it may be dangerous. And who would you be if you decided not to do those things? What would your life be like. And for me personally, if I get to live to 80, 90, 100, I want to feel like I'm all used up. I don't want to feel like I have regrets.
It seems that you speak of ancestral wisdom very often, and it touches both books. How does that guide your writing?
My writing is very lyrical, and I think it comes from the fact that I grew up singing with both my mom and dad had beautiful voices. We sang the Irish folk music like the Clancy Brothers and Tommy Makem. And so what I really do in my writing is I infuse it with that lyrical way such that it's meant to be read aloud. So my children's book, for example, it's very rhymey. It feels good to the ear to read the words because there's a cadence to them. And it's in the case of the children's book, The Inside of Me, the cadence is rhymey and fun and enchanting and whimsical. And in the case of A Moon in All Things, the cadence is very much, I think the reader feels, and I've heard this, that the reader feels that there's more going on than this is just a story, that there's levels to it, and that perhaps it's tapping into something archetypal about how the ear wants to hear a story being told, not just in the head, but out loud as well.
Well, Jennifer, I mean, your books, The Inside of Me and A Moon in All Things, are such profound reads. Where can our listeners go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
I have a website, jennifercomeau.com. I'm on most social media, often as Jennifer Elwell Comeau, a nod to my father's ancestry, which was English and German. So I did want to give him some credit, even though it's my mother's stories that I'm telling. And as a songwriter, I've got 2 albums of original music, and they're on most streaming platforms.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
You're so welcome. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate the work you do in bringing all of this creative, soulful, and enlightening kinds of work to a wider world. That means a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your Nautilus Award-winning children's book, The Inside of Me, and your debut novel, A Moon in All Things. Both books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.